Hello, everyone. So nice to have the opportunity of being here. So I am here today to speak to all of you. My name is Thais, and I am a youth representative of World Scouting and also a Next Generation Fellow for Education with the Unlock the Future Coalition. So I am here today because I am myself an example of how fulfilling a life can be if we have access to opportunities, like I'm sure that most of you here know. I had the chance to go to a very good school during all my childhood years, had parents, very caring parents, who helped me with my homework and all my school projects, besides the opportunity of going to the Scout movement, a place where I made friends for life. I learned how to work in teams, I had access to nature, and I felt supported to learn what I was curious about, to learn by doing and pursue my curiosity. This led me to a good university, and then I could get a good quality job afterwards. But what I'm speaking here is an immense amount of privilege that I had. And I'm here today also because I do not want this to be a privilege. I want this to be a right for every child. We all here want every child to have the right to be a child and play, to pursue their own curiosity, to invest in their own developments. And I'm here today because of a huge network that supported me to arrive here and to be able to be a fulfilled adult who pay my taxes, who do volunteer work, to contribute to my society. It's because of all this different network that we are this immense network is what we are calling the win-win solutions. So they are things that support every child during their entire learning experience. And to present a little bit more about that I have the honor to call here to the stage His Excellency, Dr. Tariq Al-Gurg, CEO and Vice Chairman of Dubai Cares. Please, Dr. Tariq.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a hectic week, I think, for all of us, not only for me. What have we done lately? So I hope a lot of you would know the Rewired Summit, the summit we hosted back in December at Expo 2020 Dubai. We called upon everyone in the education sector to come, from governments, from UN agencies, multilaterals, teachers, academia, ministers of education, technology, youth, finance, research houses, everyone. We wanted to have a dialogue, putting solutions to education, not talking about the things that we were not able to achieve. And that idea and that vision started in 2017 to have such a summit. The summit happened, and before the summit by a few weeks, the UN Secretary General announced the Transforming Education Summit. Now what happened, it didn't make any sense to the team at Dubai Cares to have the Rewired Summit and at the same time Transforming Education Summit. So the best thing is to pick up the phone and speak to Amina Mohammed and tell her how can we work together. And then we came to realize that the TESS will be a member state-led transaction, let's call it. And Rewired was totally different. You get the government, but you also get the international community in. And we shook hands, and I promised Amina, she goes, what are the call to actions that are going to come out from Rewired? Are you putting any action plans towards that? So we decided to have an outcomes report coming out of Rewired Summit. We had 500 speakers. We had over 35 ministers. We had 7 heads of state, unlike the 60 that are here today, but 7 is good. We had 4,300 people popping into that summit, and they came all from 144 nationalities. Now, getting all those minds together under one roof, and if we can't come out with an action report, it was not going to work for legacy plans or for change or for transformation. So the idea is to generate that report. We appointed the Education Commission to develop that report. They were on a probably a 9-month mission to complete the report, and luckily we are done with the report, and we named it together Rewiring Education for People and Planet. Now, we were also very lucky that the two words, people and planet, is being used by everyone, especially the UN system, even for climate. So I think we're on the right track, Deborah, by naming it People and Planet. Now, what I did not rehearse is the actual stuff. What does the report entail? Lisbeth was supposed to do this, but I'm going to do it. So the main idea, the main ethos behind the report is to have action items, solutions, call them, and it has to be cross-sectoral. We will not be able to transform education if we don't work with other sectors. We all know that. We've been talking about it. I urge everyone to read the report because it really tells you, this is not about the tests. The test could be one event, it could be 2 or 3. One day it will stop existing, and we have to move on with our own experiences. Rewired Summit, I don't promise anyone. If there's no legacy plans on tests, then I have to reconsider Rewired Summit. But this report is a live report, and it will be an ongoing report, and it will be updated. And all the input that has been gone into this report is from the sector. The UN is just one part of it, which is UNICEF or UNESCO and all our strategic partners. But the main thing, it is the international education community who's putting everything into this report. And we came out with 6 cross-sectoral win-win solutions, and I'm going to name them. I'm not going to go into details, to transform education. So the first one, expand early childhood programs, and that is to, of course, help end poverty. The second is to develop a team-based education workforce, and that is, of course, for good health and well-being. Thirdly, scale adaptive, inclusive, and engaging teaching, and of course, that is to reduce inequalities. The fourth is scaling school meals and school health intervention, and that is to help end hunger and improve health and well-being as well. And fifth, create diverse, certifiable routes for youth, and that is to build skills and promote inclusive and sustainable economic growth. And lastly, adapt education systems to build climate resilience and develop green skills. Now, these 6 win-win solutions, which is very cross-sectoral friendly, will not work if we don't have critical drivers pushing them forward. So one, the first and the most important driver is collective leadership. And when we say leadership, it doesn't start only from the top. Every technical expert, every driver, every enabler is a leader. So we need all leaders to be part of it. Second, connectivity and technology. Luckily, we have a declaration on that, which is the Rewire Global Declaration on Connectivity for Education. That is a UNESCO declaration, and that is the declaration that will hopefully bring all the international platforms who are into technology and connectivity, telecommunication companies, mobile companies, internet service providers, cabling companies, digital content companies, all together, donors, of course, to have a global coalition towards embedding technology and connectivity in schools for children. And we have many initiatives who are associated within this declaration. We have GIGA from UNICEF and ITU. It's a partnership. We are also founding partners with them. We have the Edison Alliance, which is under the World Economic Forum. We also have Partner to Connect, which is under the ITU as well. We try to get other platforms such as GenU and some others into it. And one last critical cross-cutting element, if it doesn't exist, it won't happen, which is financing. We know that financing is critical for every single goal within the global goals, but education is not any goal. It is the main goal. It's the solution, and it's the enabler, and it's the driver for all the other 16 goals of the SDGs. And for that, we are working with the international community to see how can we also spread the word and make everyone aware of these financing tools. One of them is GPE. I can see Joe sitting here. One of them is IFID that Gordon Brown launched. And we do also have other financing facilities. I remember one was constructed by UBS Optimus, and now we're working closely with Crédit Agricole, the World Bank, Crédit Agricole, and the WFP to create social impact bonds in school meals. And with that social impact bond, we will also have microfinancing. So as much as we can be creative in financing, we will be able to achieve it. But nothing will be achieved if we really, really do not unite together. And when I say unite, I mean really, really unite. GPE, UNICEF, UNESCO, TEST, Dubai Cares, Rewired will not be able to do anything without having fundamental and meaningful partnerships to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tariq. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much. So as a Next Generation Fellow for Education, I've been also co-leading with my colleague Alice a group of young people who have been engaged in transforming education. Some of them are here today. And we are really trying to spread it across sectors. We are already ready to engage. We are ready to do our part. So since February this year, we've been having regular meetings and really trying to make this difference that we are talking about in all these reports. This group is a powerful group of young people, and we are very happy to learn from everyone who is already doing a very good job. So I will call the next panel. So my panelists, if you allow me, I'll introduce them as we speak, but I would like to now call all of them to the stage, please. So I will, as I said, I will introduce each one as I ask the questions. And the first question will be to Inga Aishin. She is the CEO of Save the Children International. And as we know, the Rewiring report for People and Planet is a report where we call to action for incentive to structures to a multi-sector, multi-level, and multi-stakeholder action to transform education together with a wider development transformation. So Inga, as an organization very notable, sorry for the position, for collaborating with partners across sectors and with children at the center, why is a multi-sectoral approach important for ensuring equality and inclusion for all?
Thank you so much for that important question, and thank you for inviting us to this really important panel. So I think, as we've heard throughout the day, education is at a breaking point. We are witnessing an educational crisis that we haven't seen in decades, and it is important to turn things around, and it can be done. We need to stop working in silos. We need to recognize the benefits of linking investments in education to investments in other sectors. There are 4 points that I want to highlight, and the first is that it's crucial to ensure that we prioritize equity and inclusion when we talk about change in education. We have currently over 245 million children who don't enjoy any formal education, and we have millions of children in school that don't learn. And we have a massive, massive challenge that we need to do something about. And if we don't reach these children, we will not be able to solve this crisis. And just to give you one example of the challenges that many of the children that we are talking about are facing. Earlier this year, I was in Mozambique, and I met a 14-year-old girl who was heading her household. She was responsible for her 4 siblings. one of them a 3-year-old, and she had been responsible for that family since she was 11. So when she was 11, she was responsible for 3 siblings, and she was determined to go to school herself and to really push her siblings to do the same. But children like that, it's not enough just to ensure that they have access to education. We need to ensure that they have access to all the things surrounding education for them to be able to enroll and continue to be part of the education systems. So we need to address the children that are currently not in school and ensure that when they are in school that they learn. That's the first thing. I also think that the second point is that when we think about transforming education, we need to think about how we can actually transform education to something that is different and better. We published a report recently when we looked at the effects of COVID on education around the world, and the focus of that report was building forward better. Because we firmly believe that it's not enough to go back to how it was pre-COVID. We need to do things differently. And it's very important that we are looking at how we can truly transform. And since the COVID pandemic that put additional millions of children out of school, we are seeing the situation unfold in Ukraine, in Pakistan, the Horn of Africa, where more and more children are being denied their access to education. And we need to make sure that we are focusing on all the children that are suffering from the longest school closures we've seen. Thirdly, and this is back to what I said at the beginning, we need to ensure that we have an integrated approach to education. You have heard a number of people before me saying here today that if a child is hungry, they will not be able to fulfill their learning opportunities. If children are not in school, there is a risk of child marriage, there's a risk of child labor. We know that if we have the right social protection systems in place, that we will be able to enroll more children, and we will give families an opportunity to actually give their children the education they all want. I was in Afghanistan a month ago, and I met a father who was really frustrated because he said, I want all my children to be able to go to school, because if I don't give my children access to an education, it's like raising a blind child. And I want all my children to have the opportunity to see and thrive and become whoever they want to be. And the children I met, the girls I met also said, it's not just that they are worried about the lack of education and an opportunity to be part of the solution that they want to see for their country, but there's also so many additional risks. Child marriage, not being able to eat, etc. So this is really critical. And as Save the Children, we are doing a lot of programs in the education space ourselves. And one of the examples is our catch-up clubs, where we are integrating child protection and cash programming components into our learning and education programs. And the final thing that I want to say, and maybe that's the most important message from me to you today, is that you cannot do any of this without including children themselves. I am a firm believer that everything that we do in any area that includes children needs to be done in close collaboration with children and youth themselves, because they need to help us not just define the problem, but even more importantly, find the solutions.
Thank you. Thank you so much for these powerful remarks. I couldn't agree more. The young children are not only the reception of all of this, they are really the power who can transform it. So my next question will go to Youth. Youth Sungkur is a global youth ambassador from Mauritius and part of Theirworld. So in the report, the solution number 6, it highlights the need to adapt education to build climate resilience and develop green skills. So youth, how can education play a bigger role in addressing the climate crisis, and how can education collaborate better with climate actors?
Many thanks for the introduction, Thais. So my name is Youth Sungkur. I am 23 years old, and I'm from the small island of Mauritius. So as we all know, around the world, there's an education crisis and there's a climate crisis. Of course, we know that. But In my country, I see where the two are meeting. In 2021, I co-founded an NGO that is called Food, Water, Hygiene. The purpose of this NGO was to actually help every possible person in my community that were affected in some kind of way by the COVID-19 pandemic. Since then, we decided to expand a little bit, and we decided to help a lot of the people that were also affected by every kind of climate disasters. About 6 months ago, in March 2022, Mauritius was hit by one of the biggest cyclones ever yet. A lot of people suffered from it. And we decided to help them as much as we could at that time. So we went with a little truck, gathered a little bit of money, and we decided to go distribute some food with some hygiene products. And during one of the distributions, I met a woman. This woman was a single mother, quite young, who had 5 children. And I met her in front of her house. And what I saw was quite frustrating because her house got completely destroyed. Her house was wrecked. And I remember that it was panic. She couldn't do anything about it because it was so hard. And I remember that she had 5 children as well. And what stuck to me was that those 5 children, she told me that they couldn't go anywhere until the house was rebuilt. She was a single mother, she couldn't do anything else. So her 5 children, who were from maybe 4 to 13 max, they had to help. So this meant that for an unknown amount of time, 5 children, in addition to being in a place that they shouldn't be, they couldn't really go to school. So this little story is just to show that in the climate crisis, as much as in the education crisis, it is the most vulnerable, which were the least responsible, that are affected the most. So to answer the question, I will briefly make 2 points. Firstly, fundamentally, climate education needs to be included into every curriculum. Not only does it help people understand, accept, and address the impact of climate change, but it also empowers them to have the right values, perspective, and knowledge about it. I've had the chance to participate in the Transforming Education Summit that happened on Thursday and Friday and still is today with the Leaders' Day. And what I will remember is that the youth there, first of all, was very vocal, and this is amazing. But more than that, they really pushed for climate education. And not only this is amazing, but we've had the courage enough to show up in front of those ministers, and a lot of them actually agreed with putting climate education on the paper. I really do hope that our words and their words are not empty and that they will actually act upon what they were saying. And secondly, education means innovation. Education means climate innovation as well. It can foster climate innovation, and it can offer a potential for collaboration with other different sectors and other different actors. I think that today new carbon-free technologies are very expensive and not everyone can buy them. It's still hard for some people. Investment, guidance, and support from the private sector would encourage and increase the development of new ideas while decreasing the price of those products. So quickly to conclude, we have the ideas, we know the solutions, and the report has done an amazing job to outline the steps that we have to do. The only thing that is left to do is act. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. So our next question is about how the report highlights for diverse routes of developing skills and the potential of technology in helping us with that. So to have it, to diverse the ways we learn, we also need to address the digital divide. So Katie, the next question is for you. Katie Kurtz is a global head of learning at YouTube. So Katie, how do you see the role of the private sector in enabling new routes for skills development and harnessing the potential of technology for everyone, including the most marginalized?
Well, thank you so much for having me and the opportunity to be here and talk a little bit about digital skills and digital learning. I'll start by saying before I joined YouTube, I had spent about 20 years in the education space, and everything that I worked on always felt like it was unequal to the task. They seemed like small interventions and nothing that was truly transformative at scale. Part of the reason why YouTube was so compelling, tantalizing even as a platform for learning, is that it is a beloved platform for learning. There are 2 billion people who log into YouTube every month, and 93% of them say they come to get learning and knowledge information, content, whether that's finding new skills, new jobs, passing a test, just staying engaged, learning something that triggers a passion they didn't know that they had. 92% of 18 to 24-year-olds say they've used the platform to learn how to do something. And so this notion of meeting users where they are, meeting learners where they are, at whatever stage of their life journey, whatever needs they have, seemed like something potentially that could be harnessed from more informal learning to maybe more formal pathways of learning. Of course, then the pandemic sort of changed all of that immediately when YouTube became not a place I go to because I want to learn something. It becomes a place I go because I actually need to learn something. And we found in January and February of 2020, there were just in total 300 videos uploaded to the platform with remote teaching or distance learning in the title. And in March of 2020 alone, there were 23,000 videos uploaded. And so we realized right away that YouTube was becoming a bit of a lifeline for those over 1 billion students that were immediately out of school, and those teachers and those ministries of education who were trying to find ways to connect and reach them and keep them engaged. And while YouTube might never be able to replace a teacher, nor would we ever want to, as a supplement to what the teacher is doing in that classroom, we have found that it is a powerful tool for engagement. So we stood up a learning destination in it's over 40 countries now, I think, 14 different languages, and we aligned content and organized it according to where we could, the Ministry of Education's curriculum standards by age and grade level. And we've continued to invest and accelerate plans to create more structured learning experiences. Of course, there are some things like digital skills that require a more structured way of approaching them. It's content that builds on each other, and it follows a path, and the ability to find that content and then stay focused on it has been a big priority for us. The challenge, of course, though, when we think about digital skills, is that the jobs of the future don't exist yet, and the skills that you need for them are not known. So it's not a point-in-time solution. It is a lifetime of skilling, pre-skilling, skilling, up-leveling your skills or reskilling that we have to think about. And so as I think about the role that public-private partnerships can play, there are many platforms, YouTube is just one of them, where learners are already finding their confidence and their voice in learning. And the ability to channel those into more formal learning environments is something that I'm particularly excited about. Particularly excited about the potential to do that at a global scale.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I also look forward to seeing this in a global scale. And our next question is going to be to Crystal Brice, who is a New York City school teacher and alumni of the Teacher for America, which is part of the TeachForAll network. So the report also emphasizes the impact of developing a student-centered learning team approach. So this is a collaborative team of cross-sectoral professionals that really address the needs of the learners and put students at the center. So, Crystal, what has been your experience from working in such a learning team and the impact of inclusion in this learning?
Thank you so much, Thais. I just want to put a little context to who I am and where I teach. My school is literally 5 miles away from here. A vast majority of my students are Black and Hispanic. Actually, nearly 100% of my students qualify for free or reduced lunch, which means that many of my students, like myself, come from families of lower socioeconomic backgrounds. My story reflects that of many of my students. I was born and raised in Harlem, New York, attended public schools from elementary school to high school. And like many of my students, I found remarkable teachers who then inspired me to teach. And 2 years after I graduated from college, I joined Teach for America. And now I'm entering my 8th year in education, and I'm in the same school that I was placed because of Teach for America. So back to the question, what has it been like to work in a school extremely committed to learning teams? I have one word, and that's life-changing. KIPP NYC College Prep High School is deeply committed to community, to collaboration. In fact, we refer to our students and their families, as well as our staff members, as team and family. We are built on diverse learning teams. So we have our counselors who are really committed to responding to our students' mental health needs. We have our deans who are now implementing restorative justice practices to make sure that when conflict arises, we're doing it in a healthy way, right? So I want to just highlight a really important story that will really bring home this point of why learning teams are very important. And I'm going to talk about the most important learning team of all, which is our students. So I want you to journey back to me with 2019 to 2019. I had a group of really incredible student leaders who had been student leaders since 9th grade. And so this year was very difficult for many of us. We have the global pandemic. We have a series of racial injustices, one after the other. Every time you flip on the news, there's something horrifying happening. And so many of my students felt like not only were they robbed of their senior year, where they're supposed to be celebrated, but they also felt heartbroken and felt powerless. So they gathered a bunch of their trusted educators, everyone from me to biology teachers, psychology teachers, student government advisors, and they really vented and they expressed their sadness, but something really amazing happened. They channeled all of these negative emotions to something positive, which was to bring joy to their senior class. They even invited the leadership team. They invited the principal, the assistant principal, and they had all of these stakeholders literally meeting on Zoom to discuss these plans that they created themselves. They were determined. They didn't even need us to help. They just needed the platform to share their ideas and the encouragement. So for 4 months, we worked together on Zoom. And then by May, we had 2 incredible events. One was a banquet to celebrate their paths to college and careers. And then the other one was the biggest achievement of all. We really wanted to make sure that the seniors were able to celebrate their graduation. So it was actually a student who ended up finding Central Park and securing that as a venue for graduation. And they made that happen for the senior class and brought together the entire community. So I want to land with this point of, if our resounding truth is that student voice matters, then it is so important that we take a step back and that we wholeheartedly trust them to lead. I was really inspired by their brilliance. I was inspired by the way they took the problem solving that they learned in class and applied it to the real world, and how they really embodied these principles of unity and inclusivity. And they actually inspired me to apply for my current position. So I got a promotion, and now I'm the student affairs manager because of them believing in me. And now I get to help other students like them. I get to help them unleash their leadership potential, and I get to fight to make sure that their voices are always heard and that they're the ones that are affecting our school policy and that they are the ones that are also contributing to our school culture in a leadership kind of way.
Crystal, if you allow me a personal note, the bright I see in your face, it's exactly how I feel when I see my scouts as well. So yeah, working in small teams, as you said, they don't need us. They just need us to believe in them and to give them the resources. They know what they're doing. They are going to do it. So yes. So our next question is with something else that I worked with, which is data. And I'm going to ask it to Mr. Albert Nsengiyumva, who is an executive secretary of ADEA and a former minister of Rwanda. So the report identifies data as critical driver for essential evidence and equity-based planning, decision-making, and delivery at all levels. So, Mr. Albert, what good examples have you seen of collecting data and delivery to better inform policymaking at the sub-regional and regional levels, and how might this be adapted for a cross-sectoral approach?
Okay, thank you. It's quite a bit of a complex question, you know. But let me pick an example. I was listening experiences here, and you can see what data means. Data means evidence, you know. And this is something that we realize we are missing, particularly in education sector. Education is about access, is about quality, is about relevance, is about making sure marginalized students or children are able to acquire knowledge and skills like any other children. That's what you are hearing here, which I think is so important. So in the context of Africa, what we realized is that policies were not informed by evidence. And this is really the starting point. The reason we need data is because a policymaker needs to use data to inform whatever decision that's going to be made. So, starting from that, the capacity as far as my organization is concerned was to try as much as possible to sensitize policymakers, because data has always been seen as a technical issue. So we see in many countries, when they approach data, they're just looking at what is known as education management information systems. Once the systems are in place, they say, we have assaulted the issue of data, which is not true. In many cases, when you go into those systems, you find they have never been upgraded, just because people have not realized the importance of having data. So I'll pick examples that a few countries working with partners have already initiated. So I know example in Gambia, in my country, where they come up with a new approach in addressing data challenges on the continent, where they are able to identify, to set up IDs for any single child that enter into school. And they are able to follow the pathway by trying as much as possible to put any information that shows the progression of the student. One of the problems that this has actually solved, in many cases we found when children move from one school to another, they completely become like a new student in that school. Having an ID attached to a child allows to follow, even if the child moved from one school to another. It also helps to address the issue of dropout, which is so important. I'm sure you have seen statistics around the COVID-19. One of the impact was the dropout went very high. So having data that is attached to a child, to a student, make it easy. But the most important thing now is to make sure there's a governance in place. Moving away from a technical standpoint, making it more understandable by heads of schools, the system that using data means planning better, addressing policy issues that are informed, and so on and so forth. So to me, that's really one of the reasons on our side that we started really initiating an initiative, what we call a data challenge initiative, where we're not tackling it on the technical side, but we want to tackle it at the level of making sure the leaders understand that data become a need for a decision making. So to me, that's really one of the examples that I wanted to share. Secondly, and allow me to back to some of the points that were raised here, which actually are connected to data, we are talking about technology, integration of technology in education, which is so important. And we have learned this during COVID-19, supporting schools and children to continue learning during school closure. It was very important. But we realized that there were lack of data to inform the capacity for teachers to be able to follow students. There was lacking data to be able to assess children that are following classes remotely. So that's really, again, integrating technology is one thing, but how do we make sure that technology is followed by the clear tools that would support, the need to get high learning outcome? So to me, those are really some of the examples that I wanted to share, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you to be here today, sharing your thoughts with us. So I have some open questions, and I will need your initiative to say, I want to answer this question. Okay? So one of them is, what are the financing and planning considerations that are necessary to enable this multi-sectoral collaboration that we are talking about? Yes, please.
So, of course, there's a lot of things that my colleagues here have said that I would love to respond to, but I will address your question. But I think there are a couple of themes that I think is quite consistent in what we all say, and that is really how powerful it is with child participation, and also how adults in school matter, investing in teachers and ensuring that we have the right data evidence and also innovation and technology. I think that's key. But if I'm going to take a step back and think about the multi-sectoral collaboration from a higher level, I think it's in the near term, it is really critical that we prioritize the Education Cannot Wait replenishment next year, because none of these things will happen unless we have the funding available. And we need the international communities, the donor community, the governments themselves, everyone to rally around transforming education and ensuring that we are breaking the education crisis that we are witnessing right now. And if we don't do that, we will not turn things around. I also think, and I really loved how you connected climate change and the education, because I think that is critical, and I do agree with you that ensuring that we include resilient societies and give children the means to address and respond to climate change is critical. But there's also a lot of climate money and funding available, and we need to ensure that funding streams are inclusive of education, because it's very interlinked and very connected. And the final piece is around the humanitarian development coherence, because as an organization, Save the Children, responding to more and more crises in the world, education in emergencies is key. But traditionally, many of the donors haven't invested in education as a response to humanitarian crisis. It has been much more as a part of a development funding, and we need to bring it into the very both fundings. And there's a lot of global compact on refugees, safer school declarations, and the new comprehensive school safety frameworks. There's a lot of things that we need to invest behind to make sure that we are creating a safe space for children to learn.
Thank you very much. Actually, Mr. Albert, as someone who has already worked in a ministry, I would also like to hear from you what are these financing and planning considerations that need to be taken in order to have this multi-sectoral collaboration? I'm actually going to complement what she was talking about, because the tendency is to think about education is only a sector for educators and other. Education is actually a societal issue, so it concerns everyone. We cannot expect a country to develop without fixing education. There's no way. We have examples everywhere. When we see what is happening in Asia, there's a good reason. There are decisions they made
to invest in education. So in this perspective, and I will pick one of the examples during my time as a minister, we initiated what was called a public-private policy dialogue. Because at that time we realized, and I was responsible for technical and vocational, only government was the one putting money into education, when the private sector was just waiting to get graduates and recruit them. And they say, no, it cannot work like that. And they were complaining all kind of things. The graduates are not of quality, they don't meet our needs. We say, no, you are the one demanding for it. You should invest as well. So that's where, to me, it's so important. We cannot claim government, especially in the context of Africa, where as a Minister of Education, you need to deal with foundational literacy and numeracy, you need to deal with early childhood development, you need to deal with higher education. It's too heavy for a government. So I think we need to move into multi-sectorial approach, making sure all stakeholders are considering and they engage and they see their responsibilities to make education work. And I'm happy to hear about some of the facilities that are coming up to support education. One of these facilities that is coming up as far as Africa is concerned is a new fund that will support education, particularly around technical, vocational, and higher education, because those are really costly subsectors where we need to have alternative financing mechanism. So I tend really to support the idea that unless other sectors see education as a foundation to support their growth, there's not much we can achieve. I was happy today to see a momentum around this transforming education, the declaration, where they say, but this is a new challenge for us. Because by moving here, we need to realize how are we going to move from a commitment to actions? How are we going to get the buy-in from other stakeholders so that they understand it's not just an issue for people in education, it's a societal issue, it's a country issue, it's a continental issue. We as a platform that support policy dialogue and through peer learning and knowledge exchange, this is what we are trying to do, bringing those decision makers, but together with the private sector, to make sure that they understand that unless we collaborate, unless we cooperate, and come up with the financing mechanisms to support, not much can actually be achieved. Thank you.
So, Katie, if you allow me to direct this question to you, what is the challenge that you see for this cross-sectoral collaboration, and what is one action that your organization could take in order to enable this cross-sectoral collaboration?
Well, for our work in particular, we are just a platform of distribution, right? We're not the content creator, but we provide the access to the tools, and we continue to invest in those tools. What we need are then the public-private partnerships that we have been trying to forge, which with different workforce development programs, ministries of education, countries around the world, of thinking again about how do you create new onboarding mechanisms for learners? How do you help find them where they are with their intent to learn? And then how can we help channel them from what might start as an informal learning experience or a supplemental experience into something that actually could be a formal experience? And so one of the concrete steps that I am working on is trying to figure out how can one actually create that pathway starting from a place that doesn't feel like education necessarily, but has all the motivation and intent and satisfaction and confidence that comes from learning on your own. How can we then channel that into something where you can actually get recognition in the real world for the skills that you've learned? Because we know when it comes to digital learning skills, your need to reskill yourself over the course of your lifetime is going to be, over a dozen times most likely. And we don't have the traditional in-person infrastructure to handle that globally at the scale of 1 billion more learners in the next decade. So that is one concrete step that I am interested in and working on. And then, of course, the forging of more partnerships with the actual content creators. We, again, are just a platform of access. It's the teachers and educators who use that platform to create really rich, engaging learning content. And so that's the other that's the other challenge and incredible opportunity as well. Any teacher anywhere who up until now maybe has been in a classroom impacting lives in a transformative way, 30 students at a time can potentially have that experience at 30,000 students at a time. And what might that look like?
Absolutely. Thank you. So my next question is going to be to you, and it's going to be a very hard one. I'm sorry for that. But you were saying how happy we were to see on Thursday the climate education being put on the paper. And you said what is missing now is to act. So what do you think is missing for us to make it out of the paper? I said it's going to be a hard one.
What is missing for us too?
To make it an action for climate education to really be in all the curriculums and be in the classrooms.
I think first of all, I think what we did on Thursday was amazing. I'll take 2 minutes just to say how incredible the youth were on Thursday, on Friday. It was amazing. Like the amount of energy and passion that the youth has, especially on those around SDG 4, is more than inspiring, really. I'm with Theirworld. We have a network of more than 5,000 global youth ambassadors. And we came here in New York with a team of 5 different global youth ambassadors, and we have to represent all of the other 5,000, right? And we have been doing our best to represent them, and we've been talking with the youth. Their energy is already amazing, and I think what they did, what we did, is that we influenced the political leaders to actually make a change, and it's really a great cause. I really want to say as well that our action that happened on Thursday and Friday should not stop here, and we should continue on pushing, because we all know that sometimes a summit can stay as a summit, and it can be quite frustrating as well. I really think that we should use this opportunity as a launchpad to really push for inclusive, transformative education policies where climate is put at the forefront, but also gender issues, bullying issues, cyberbullying as well. We're doing a great job, and we're doing so well, and we just need to keep doing what we're doing, and we're going to be great.
I absolutely agree. With the young people, we know what we're doing. We just need you to believe us too and involve us really in all the processes. Thank you very much, you. And to close this panel, I would like to ask you, Crystal, as someone who has contact with students, who really is transforming education yourself every day, what is one thing that you want everyone in this audience to go home with?
Our students are brilliant. They are the key to so much in this world. And people keep asking me, well, why are you still a teacher? And every year I find more students that inspire me. I said it before, all we need is to just give them the platform, the trust to voice how they feel, but more importantly, hear them and support them in making action happen. And like, I'm just thinking about my students now and how many I would love for them to experience this, to be here. I have one of my students here. Shout out to him. And just see what he accomplished today, like in terms of just being able to MC a transformative student youth, event. It was beautiful. And so I think our students are the key. And just believe in them and give them the space to lead.
Thank you so much. This brings our panel to an end. I would like to thank you very much for sharing your contributions, and please everyone read the report. It's a very good one. Thank you.